Alright, you guys, welcome back once again to the channel. So here we are once again, ready to react to another series of horror stories. This one here is called 5 True Urban Legend Horror Stories Animated. And this is by Urban Legends Animated. Alright, so if you guys want to check this out on your own, it's a little bit of a lengthy video, so if you guys want to check it out on your own time, you can click in the description, and the link in the description down below, and then you can have a look at it on your own time, whenever you have time. Or you can watch it with me today, and we can go ahead and check it out together, and I'll give you guys my thoughts right after. So once again, this one here is lengthy. It's got about 5 stories, of course, and it's about 45 minutes or so. So I got my popcorn over here right beside me. I'm gonna be munching on those while I watch these, and hopefully you guys got something over there. If you guys do not, pause this video before we start and go grab some pizza rolls, go grab some popcorn, whatever it is, because this is gonna be a little lengthy once again. So other than that, if you are ready, let's go ahead and jump right into this and check this out. Oh, here we go. The long neck ghost.
Today, I'm going to tell you something that my father went through. In the past, in my father's village, there was a still custom called One Night with the Dead. At that time, the custom of this region was very respectful of men and despised women. The status of woman at that time was quite low. When returning to her husband's house, the woman often had to do hard work. If she did not do well, a woman might be beaten and tortured by her husband as a matter of course. No one had the right to interfere in other people's family affairs, and no one could protect the woman. And of course, the woman's family certainly wouldn't want that to happen to their children. Sometimes the police interpreted the woman's cause of death as suicide, and the husband's family would not bear any punishment. So, in the village, a custom was formed. That was, for the first 7 days after the wife's death, the village youth would tie the husband up and lock him up with the wife's body for 1 night.
Dang.
If nothing happened in the following morning, it meant that the cause of death had nothing to do with the husband, or that the deceased had forgiven the husband.
Wow.
The purpose of custom was for the man to suffer some torture for his wife's family to calm down. When my father was young, his friend's sister married. After returning to her husband's house, she hanged herself a month later. So with the support of the brothers, they went to the husband's village and tied the man to perform the above custom. My father said that at the time the man was still very resolute and stubborn, saying that he was very good to his wife and that she had mental problems, so he committed suicide. When the husband found that he would be locked in a room with his wife's body, he got so scared that he screamed and begged to be released. They left him with his wife's body. If he was fine the following morning, he would be free. Before leaving, these people turned off the lights and locked the doors. Suddenly, the whole room was dark. Only the light of the moon shining through the window. The space was completely dark. Only the man and the hanging corpse remained. The husband's eyes were fixed on the corpse. A feeling of fear enveloped him. In this situation, no matter how brave the husband was, he couldn't stand it. He felt fear, his heart pounding in his chest, holding his breath and hoping for a quick morning. The wife's body was covered with a white sheet, motionless. Outside, the husband's screams could be heard clearly. Until midnight, he was too tired to stop. But at this moment, terrible things began to happen to him. He looked directly at the corpse, his whole body shaking with fear. Suddenly, there was a sound in his wife's corpse. The corpse in the room suddenly giggled, accompanied by a terrifying laugh. The corpse shook unceasingly and it stretched the white cloth. The corpse suddenly stood up slowly. Moments later, the corpse was standing upright with its hair covering its face, and it was moving towards the husband. The corpse's legs had already left the ground and slowly rose. Slowly, the corpse was hovering close to the husband, like when hanging in the house. Despite her husband's pitiful pleas, the corpse drew closer and closer. A pair of white teeth opened and a pale face appeared. The corpse revealed a pair of bloodshot eyes, staring at the man as if to say something resentful. Immediately after, a more horrifying scene happened. The neck of the wife's corpse suddenly lengthened. Just like that, the neck stretched out nearly 2 meters like a snake and approached the husband.
Oh, she's gonna swallow him?
The large pale face leaned straight in front of her husband. He stared blankly and couldn't move his body because he was so scared. The husband was sweating, unable to make a sound, staring blankly at the body and waiting for the terrible thing to happen to him. The corpse of the woman did not speak, but growled and stared at him with an increasingly angry and fierce expression. Suddenly, the wife opened her mouth wide and rushed towards her husband. The scene was terrible. Suddenly, a scream rang out. The husband was so scared that he peed his pants. He kept begging his wife not to come near him. The people who locked him were peeking outside like they were watching a horror movie, and the main character was the husband. Yes, they did not leave. They arranged everything to teach the husband a lesson, as well as force him to confess what he did to lead to the death of his wife. The father's friend was smugly viewing the frightened husband inside. Suddenly, he stopped when he heard a familiar voice from the group behind him. He turned back amazed and confused.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Aren't you supposed to be inside pretending to be the ghost? The friend of my father's friend thought that his cousin was pretending to be the ghost inside. But why was he standing with them outside now? While standing there, the rest of them were equally surprised. But the cousin was even more surprised.
He was dressed as a... Oh, wow.
He took off his wig and said that the plan was predetermined, that it was still half an hour before scaring the husband. It was too early. They were all confused and felt that something was wrong.
Oh my
so
God.
Who was pretending to be a ghost and scaring the husband inside? The cousin at this time also scratched his head and said, "Strange, isn't it? Do you think the ghost is real?" At this point, these people looked at each other. They deduced that if this cousin was still standing outside, what they saw inside was the real ghost of his wife. They were all scared now, confused and didn't know what to do. Everyone's limbs were as cold as freezing, not daring to move. They slowly looked inside again. It was scary.
Oh my god.
The long neck of the ghost was threatening the man inside. Looking closely, they could see that it was indeed a real ghost. And the fear was at its peak. They screamed and ran out of the yard. The following morning, these people dared to come back here to check. The woman's corpse was still lying in the house, and the husband had fainted from fear.
Oh my god.
The man then went crazy, crying and laughing, and saying crazy things to get his wife's forgiveness.
Dude, that is horrifying, man. A job for finding corpses in the river.
The story occurred in a river which ran through my village. People frequently drowned in the area due to the fast and deep currents. At the time, there was a family who stood by the river, all with sad expressions, looking at the water and lamenting. The reason was that their son drowned while bathing in the river, so they sought the assistance of Mr. Kang, who specialized in retrieving dead bodies from the river. All of a sudden, at the precise moment, the man pointed to the water and exclaimed loudly, "Come back! Come back!" With their expectant eyes, the three-person family looked down at the river. They saw Mr. Kang and his wooden boat. Mr. Kang, who had a shabby and austere face, worked as a boatman on the river as well as a body picker. The victim's family was very worried and anxiously waited for Mr. Kang's wooden boat to arrive. The boat approached the shore slowly. The river was now rising, so the boat swayed, and Mr. Kang had to work hard to keep the boat afloat. Next, Mr. Kang quickly rowed to shore. When Mr. Kang's boat docked, the victim's three family members looked at the wooden boat, worried, and the mother's face was sad. There was nothing in the dug-out canoe but a fishing net. With tears in her eyes, the mother asked Mr. Kang if he could retrieve her son's body, her voice filled with pain. Mr. Kang did not respond, instead quietly raising his wrist, which had a rope attached to it. He stretched one end of the rope into the water while the other appeared to be tied to a heavy object, and he was attempting to pull it. Mr. Kang's face became dull and solemn. He still did not open his mouth to speak, but his gaze was fixed on the river's surface. When Mr. Kang pulled the rope out of the water, a white corpse's arm was pulled out with it, shocking everyone. It turned out that Mr. Kang tied the body with a rope and dragged him to the shore. According to locals here, drowning people should not be put on the boat because it would be very unlucky. Mr. Kang remained silent as he brought the body ashore. He then turned around and returned to the boat. As the mother witnessed the pitiful scene unfolding in front of her eyes, she sobbed and screamed as she gazed at her son's corpse. Mr. Kang was used to such scenes, and he rowed away calmly. Mr. Kang's boat was about to leave the dock when a man reached out and called out to him. "Mr. Kang, wait!" The man presented Mr. Kang with a large sum of money in exchange for Mr. Kang retrieving their son's body. Mr. Kang, on the other hand, refused the money and sailed away. "I'm not doing this for the money. Take care of your son's funeral well. I'm leaving." Mr. Kang did not despise money. Rather, a heartbreaking incident in his past had changed his mind. Previously, Mr. Kang had both rowed and caught fish in the river. If there was any dead body floating in the river, Mr. Kang would also pick it up to take advantage of some extra money. This story took place 5 years ago. Only Mr. Kang was famous for picking up dead bodies in the river. When the body of the victim was discovered, Mr. Kang did not immediately hand it over to the victim's family, instead allowing them to kneel and beg on the shore. Because the poor couple did not have enough money to pay Mr. Kang, they prayed and pleaded with him to reduce the price to allow them to receive their son's body. So Mr. Kang thought for a while and then lowered the price. However, the price was still too high in comparison to the poor couple's family, so the old woman cried out and begged Mr. Kang to be merciful and reduce the money for them. When confronted with the situation, the old man cried out and said, "I beg you, we will pay you a little in advance. The rest we will borrow and pay you later." Having said that, both the old couple continued to bow their heads to Mr. Kang, who was still holding the rope to hang their son's body and considering the old man's suggestion. Mr. Kang then agreed to accept the money and delivered the body to the old couple for them to bring it back. Mr. Kang's wife died young, and the family had a daughter who married as well. Because she was concerned that her father would be alone, she would come home every weekend and took advantage of making a delicious meal for Mr. Kang. Today, having a good amount of money, Mr. Kang happily bought wine and meat ready for a delicious meal with his dear daughter. He handed his daughter the large piece of pork he was holding in his hand and told her to make the casserole. Mr. Kang's daughter was now his only source of comfort. He was overjoyed that his daughter still came here to cook for him on a regular basis. Previously, the daughter had opposed Mr. Kang's drinking, but today she not only cooked a delicious meal, but she also bought her father a bottle of good wine. Father and daughter had dinner together and told each other many amusing stories. Mr. Kang then pondered and asked his daughter, "Is there anything you want to tell, Dad?" Mr. Kang's daughter just said that she was very happy because he was always healthy and happy, but she wanted to say something that she always kept in her heart. It turned out that the daughter was always opposed to her father doing the job of picking up dead bodies for wages. The villagers claimed that Mr. Kang was dishonest when he took advantage of the unscrupulous job to make money. Mr. Kang raised his face before his daughter finished speaking. He used to hear people whispering behind his back saying such things, but now even his daughter was opposed to his work. His wife died young, and he had to do everything he could to earn money to raise her. Mr. Kang didn't care what other people said,
You seem crazed
but
right there,
today,
didn't he?
hearing his daughter say that, he felt disappointed. Mr. Kang immediately stood up, enraged, and scolded his daughter for failing to sympathize with him. Mr. Kang walked out angrily after arguing with his daughter, refusing to look back even though his daughter was calling him. Mr. Kang was extremely frustrated at the time, and even his own daughter looked down on him. Mr. Kang had only taken a few steps outside when it began to rain. He felt as if God was against him. Mr. Kang walked back to the shack where he used to rest by the river in the rain. He lay in the shack with wet clothes, huddled up, and it showed that Mr. Kang was very cold and sad. He couldn't help but cry when he thought about everything that had happened and how much bitterness he had suffered. It kept raining continuously. Mr. Kang had no idea when he fell asleep. All of a sudden he vaguely heard the sound of rain outside the shack, mixed with his daughter's voice calling him. He got to his feet and looked outside where he saw his daughter standing in the rain calling to him. Mr. Kang ignored his anger when he saw his daughter soaking in the rain. Fearing that his daughter would catch a cold from the rain, he quickly ran out of the shack. Mr. Kang looked at his daughter as she stood outside in the rain, knowing how much his heart ached. It was just that his daughter's behavior was a bit strange. She begged Mr. Kang to forgive her for her words earlier, and in the end she said she had to go away, so she came to see him one last time. Mr. Kang found it difficult to understand where his daughter was going as a result of these words. He was being hesitant when his daughter turned around and walked into the river. Mr. Kang rushed forward to stop her, but what he didn't expect was that his hand had already passed over his daughter's body. His hands were shaking. Standing dumbfounded, he kept calling his daughter's name. A hunch told him that his daughter had an accident and tried to come back here to see him. Mr. Kang sadly called out his daughter's name, but to no avail. The daughter went to the cold river bank. The father's heartbreaking scream was drowned out by the sound of rain, making the pain of losing a child almost interminable. From the moment Mr. Kang walked out, the daughter went along the river to find her father, but unfortunately fell into the river and drowned. From then on, Mr. Kang rowed on the river to help retrieve the dead body and didn't take a penny.
Oh my god. That one was definitely more sad than scary, man. Oh man, that's really sad. But what I was thinking at first is that the daughter was never there in the house with him, but turns out she was. She did come over and visit him. Looks like she was like his only moments of. She was his only moments of joy whenever she showed up. Like where he kind of went back to his human side, right? And then when he did his job, he was like almost dead inside, like expressionless. And unfortunately, yeah, he lost his cool. He like blew up on her and totally scared her because she said she didn't like that he was doing that job, which I totally understand about all of that. And yeah, man, this just sucks. She like went over and went to look for him, and And that tragedy happened, man. Yeah, that was definitely more sad than scary, I would say. Jesus. The story of ghosts ordering food in Hong Kong.
In December 1989, the event occurred in Hong Kong's North District, which was an international municipality in the New Territories. There was an old restaurant called Hong Cha that specialized in various types of appealing cuisine, but generally only offered char siu, rice, and pho. Another day, Sheng, a young guy working at the restaurant, received a call to order food for 4 people, including pho and grilled pork rice with eggs. It's at number C, building B in the Garden Plaza, isn't it? Okay, I'll deliver it to you right now. Sheng instantly grabbed a pen and notepad to jot down the address. He then proceeded to deliver food to clients. This address wasn't difficult to find, so Sheng didn't have to spend too much time to look for it. It was an ancient building, it was chilly, and appeared like it hadn't been occupied in a long time. When he arrived at the correct address, he raised his hand and rang the doorbell. A blast of wind blew, sending shivers down his spine. But the doorbell rang for a long time. No one opened the door, and the posters strewn in front of the door indicated that this home had appeared to be abandoned for a long time. Sheng rang the doorbell many times more, but no one replied or opened the door. Sheng wondered if he had misspelled the address since the restaurant had been quite busy before.
Yeah.
Thinking he'd been scammed,
that'd be my first thought
he turned his back to return to the restaurant. But as he did, a voice in the room sounded from behind Sheng. It sounded like someone was attempting to open the door. He thought he heard a voice, but it was foggy and indistinct. The door suddenly opened with a creak, accompanied by a terrible sound made Sheng nervous. The door was opened to expose a small gap, but the interior was so dark that Sheng couldn't see what was inside. The person inside only spoke in a low, raspy voice and very slightly opened the door, as though no one was permitted to peek inside. Then that person handed a banknote through the gap of the door. This person's hand was really odd. Even though the person opened the door slightly and placed the money outside, Sheng couldn't see who it was. It appeared to be a male. Sheng carefully examined the note. There was no issue. Sheng thought the man was strange when he instructed him to leave the meal at the door. That night, the restaurant was being cleaned up and getting ready to close. While auditing the income and expenses for the day, the owner noticed something odd. He discovered a joss paper among real money. He had no idea where this note originated from, but it made him feel extremely uneasy. Who is taking part in this game? Why is there a joss paper here? Mr. Lee displayed the note to the employees and cautioned them. He suspected that real money had been switched for joss paper. He tried to mention it aloud so that the staff wouldn't do it again, but he became enraged and tossed the joss paper in the garbage. The next day, an order for dinner came from that address again, and they ordered the restaurant to serve them the same meal as yesterday. The owner promptly confirmed the order and asked Sheng to continue delivering. However, the situation with food delivery remained same from yesterday. Money was still given through the door gap, and food was still requested to be put at the door. The people inside were still not revealing themselves. Who did it? Do you think I'm a moron? The owner's voice continued to yell loudly. The reason was that he spotted a joss paper again at night. Seeing the boss was so upset, Sheng then informed him about the unusual food delivery to that address. For a long time, the owner reasoned that if the residents in that house continued to order meals from the restaurant, he would find out the truth. The next day, as predicted, there was an order from that address again. The owner personally delivered the meal to the location and received the cash from the door gap. He picked up the bill and carefully examined it, flipping it back and forth, but he couldn't see anything suspicious about it. The owner, like Sheng, placed food at the door. He hastily grabbed the money and departed, his face now full of contemplation mixed with bewilderment. Returning to the store, he placed the money aside this time to observe if anything odd happened in order to prevent the same misunderstanding as the previous 2 times. After the owner had completed calculating other income, he glanced at the bills in the evening, but what he saw shocked him. This occurrence terrified him so much that he dropped his cigarette and his mouth wide open as if he had witnessed something awful. Those seemingly regular money notes he had placed in a different corner of the table had now been transformed into joss papers once more. The owner was so terrified that he yelled to the police in a quivering voice, "Police! It's me! Something awful has occurred. Please be here as soon as possible." Following to what the owner said, the police hurried to the location, but they discovered that the doorbell was entirely broken and no one came to open the door. The cops had to use force to smash the door down. However, once inside, they discovered that the door was locked from the inside, but the horrifying image in front of their eyes caused them all to fear. There was a mahjong table in the middle of the room and some dead people next to it. They died in a big puddle of dried blood. These people had been dead for a long time, and their corpses had shrunk, leaving just dry skeletons, and their flesh had disintegrated. Based on the conditions at the site, they were most likely using a coal burner in the room to keep warm, but ended up inhaling poisonous gas. Because these people lived very private lives and didn't interact with anyone, no one discovered their bodies. But the empty lunchboxes littered throughout the room gave the cops pause because everyone in the room was dead. So, who ate the food? These corpses were discovered and transported to the mortuary for forensic testing, confirming that they had been dead for more than a week, although the food in their stomachs had only been there for 2 days, which was rice and fur. The test findings astounded the whole Hong Kong police force. The dead man's fingerprints were also discovered on Mr. Lee's joss papers. Soon after, this odd event traveled across Hong Kong and was published by various media outlets. The occurrence became a riddle that the police could not solve. It had become the Hong Kong's police's sole publicly acknowledged super mysterious case in decades. According to the Feng Shui shaman, the spirits of the dead could not leave the building where the incident occurred since there was no sunshine, so they constantly felt they were still alive, and sometimes people still could hear them. That room was filled with the sound of mahjong players.
That is super, super horrifying. I think this is probably the most scariest one I've seen so far. I love the environment sometimes that the artist shows, where it looks like they're still kind of sketched out, but that actually increases the horror look to them. You know, they're distorted. They're like, how do you call it? Like they're just like, I can't even think of the word. Like they're not crisp, they're not finely drawn. You can see like distorted lines and things like that. That really enhances the horror element. You know, that's really cool. The woman on the highway.
In 2019, Ken and his colleague Kiba went on a business trip to the suburbs. Both returned home after finishing their jobs. Because of going away, and it appeared to be a bit boring, so the two found something to discuss with each other. So Kiba stated that it appeared to be the route where there were many rumors about ghosts. He looked outside, then turned to Ken. "Do you believe the rumors about female ghosts appearing on the street?" Ken turned to assure him that it was all a rumor. Besides, nothing had happened when they passed by there in the morning. When it came to ghosts topic, Ken was only now paying attention. It was true that the road was very dark and frightening at night. All of a sudden, Ken was startled and slowed down as he noticed a girl ahead of him walking slowly. The girl was dressed in a short skirt which resembled business attire. She had a slim body and walked slowly. Kiba and Ken had just seen the girl when their eyes lit up, and Ken offered to give her a ride. Both sounded the horn to get her attention, but strangely, she still didn't intend to dodge the car or turn around. As a result, Kiba purposefully banged on the car door in order to make a noise and attract her attention. "Hey baby, are you hitchhiking? There is a spare spot in our car here." The fact that she didn't react made Kiba a bit impatient. He leaned forward to get a better look at her, but all of a sudden Kiba was terrified. His voice stammered and his expression was amazing. At the point, Kiba was almost speechless. His entire body stiffened, showing great horror when he saw the girl's face. It was a pale face. Black eye sockets and both eyes and mouth were bleeding non-stop, which was extremely frightening. Kiba was still trembling at the point, stammering that there was a ghost, even though Ken was surprised to ask what happened again and again. Kiba was still terrified and shouted loudly, urging Ken to hurry up. "It was a ghost! She was a ghost! Hurry up!" Ken returned to take a look after hearing Kiba's statement. He was also bewildered by Kiba's demeanor. Kiba now continued to shout, looking extremely scared. "Hurry up! She is chasing us!" In the end, Ken reflected and asked whether Kiba was trying to make fun of him or not. Under Ken's scrutiny, Kiba did not appear to change his expression, remaining the same white and terrified face. "Don't you believe it? It is a real ghost!" Before he could continue, the scene in front of Kiba caused his face to change color. Ken also became aware of something unexpected at the moment, and he was taken aback. Both of them were terrified now. What the hell was going on? It was still the same girl. She appeared in front of the car, and because it was so unexpected that Ken couldn't control the steering wheel, causing the car to wobble. Ken struggled to keep his grip on the steering wheel, and the car narrowly missed the girl. Because it was right at the turn, it caused the car to swerve to the side and then to the other side, creating a very dangerous situation. After regaining his composure, Kiba breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, nothing had happened. Ken was also sweating at the time.
Lost control of the car.
It turned out there was a real ghost. She just walked behind and briefly appeared in front of the car. It was terrifying. The car sped up to a rest stop. Ken immediately stopped the car. Ken quickly got out of the car and urged his friend to pee. Having to meet a ghost made him terrified in order that he almost peed his pants. Ken told Kiba to deal with it quickly and got back into the car. Ken and Kiba stood a few trees apart. The space was quiet and cold. The surrounding forest was also extremely gloomy. Probably because there were no streetlights, and the streets here were so dense that they blocked out the moonlight, making the place even darker and more terrifying. Kiba was comfortably peeing when he abruptly heard a noise from inside the forest. It was a long, frightening howl. It was terrifying. It was the same girl from before. From afar, she had a crooked gait. Her head tilted to one side as if her neck was broken. Eyes and mouth still pouring with blood. She was getting closer to him. As soon as Kiba saw her, He froze. His legs were stiff, and he
She
couldn't
a zombie?
move. The girl staggered like a zombie. Kiba stood in fear for a few seconds. Then he yelled and dashed towards the car.
Oh
Ken
my
was
God.
leaning against the car, smoking a cigarette, when he noticed his friend running out with a terrifying face. He ran while screaming, "There was a ghost!" Ken rushed in and started the car after realizing that something terrifying had occurred. Ken then quickly stepped on the pedal and drove away. At the moment, Ken and Kiba were convinced that the ghost girl was following them. Now even Ken was shaking with fear. They were both drenched in sweat,
Oh, God.
but their bodies were cold and shivering. The two were moving at breakneck speed, but the sight in front of them was incredible.
She appeared again.
Ken's eyes widened in surprise as well. It was her. She stood in front of the car, and by the time they noticed her and realized what had happened, it was too late. There was a horrible noise. Ken crashed straight into her. The force of the impact was so powerful that she was thrown very high in front of them. Blood was dripping like a broken water pipe, splashing everywhere from the air, then sticking to their windshield. And in an instant, a long loose head of hair fell in front of the windshield. Her head was dangling from the window, staring them down. Her eyes became bloodshot and almost protruding. The mouth was wide open and it looked terrible. At the point, Ken almost
Oh my
lost
God,
control.
dude.
His hands could no longer direct the steering wheel in front of him. The car collided with a power pole on the side of the road. The power pole shook violently, but unfortunately it did not collapse on the car. The accident was terrifying. The first half of the car was destroyed, and the window was shattered. Kiba then scrambled to
This is
get
very
out
good
of the
art,
car.
man. This is-
He was heavily
he's
leaning
like-
on the ground as a fulcrum. But at the
Shots of the
moment
car
when
crash
he
and
raised
the-
his eyes, a horrible scene occurred that haunted Kiba for the rest of his life.
What is he now?
The female demon flew towards him
Jesus
from afar at
Christ.
breakneck speed. She opened a big mouth with a red tongue protruding in front of him. After the accident, Ken unfortunately died in the car. Kiba, on the other hand, was able to save his life because he was treated on time. However, Kiba now had gone insane, and he was still haunted by the ghost girl.
Dang, dude. I was gonna say real quick before we continue on the last one here is it's funny how like the fact that you know they don't like the victim does not die. It's like I think that's worse than if they died from the threat that they're facing, because now they're left to remember what the event that happened to them, and that can like totally mess with their mind, and eventually they can become insane thinking about all of that happened. You know, so like it's really tragic to me when that's like the ultimate result of everything. Like just nobody believes you. You witnessed something horrifying, inhumane, but now you're just left to live the rest of your life only keeping it inside your head, in your memory.
I personally experienced this event, and it was the most terrifying memory that I would never forget. I relocated to the city in 2008 to begin my first year of college. I shared a dorm room with Chow, a buddy from our hometown. I wanted to go to the beach to play after cleaning the room, so I asked Chow, "Hey, do you want to go somewhere? Or let's go to the beach for a walk." But because Chow packed so much luggage, he didn't completely tidy his stuff and didn't want to go out, so I had to go out by myself. As a person who lived in the highlands, I had a great desire to see the sea, and I registered in this institution because I wanted to live near the water. When I arrived at the beach, gorgeous views
mountains hollow.
exceeded my expectations. I didn't anticipate the sea to be this beautiful, and everything transpired in front of me as if it were a dream.
That's crazy. That looks really
The
nice.
chilly
Like
sea breeze rushed past. I was able to see numerous flocks of seagulls soaring around, which felt fantastic. The sound of the sea crashing on the coast, followed by the sound of powerful waves, gave me a completely different sensation than that enormous rivers I've witnessed. The huge sandy beach and the raging waves created an experience that was difficult to express by words. My soul was now soothed in peace. It was also late afternoon and numerous seabirds and seagulls were chirping and flying around. I still didn't want to leave. The water had sucked me in, so I strolled east on the smooth sand. There were a few huge boulders, so I took off my shoes and sat on one, looking out at the lovely seascape. The setting sun painted the water surface a brilliant crimson color. All of them were in such a harmony. That gorgeous ocean made me forget about time. Everything appeared to come to a halt. I sat for more than 2
I don't know, I
hours
get
in
so
such
scared, like when I look at the
awe-inspiring
ocean waves.
surroundings. I didn't get up and
Like a
go
trigger
until
for
the sun
anxiety,
had
you know?
completely set, and the night sea wind made me feel cold. But at this very time, I discovered a serious problem. Something piqued my interest. Many beaches and coral reefs behind me had vanished. How come they just vanished all of a sudden? It made me so curious. Then I realized that the sea fluctuated with the tides, and tide level might be high by now. I was standing on this reef, watching the waves rise higher and higher behind me. I calmed myself and looked cautiously, gently getting into the water, and saw that it was already up to my waist.
Oh, dang.
Concerned that the tide might rise even sooner, I hastily raced to the coast, walked into the sea without caring about my clothes getting wet, and discovered another problem. I thought the waves would simply soak my pants a bit, but with only a couple more waves hitting me, drenching my entire body, I found a large cut on my foot. But I couldn't worry too much at the moment since I was so terrified and my foot was bleeding, so I hurried up to the coast. I attempted to run as fast as I could back to my dorm, trembling from the cold. Fortunately, after a few minutes, I arrived. Did you go to view the sea or did you take a swim? You're drenched, Chow inquired, seeing that I was soaking wet. But when he spotted me passing by, he suddenly became terrified. He was trembling, a look of horror on his face, and he pointed at me, stammering, "Behind you! Why is there a woman behind you?" Chow claimed there was a woman with long hair wearing yellow clothes sitting on my back. It was quite an unpleasant feeling, but I didn't realize there was anything heavy on me. "Which woman? Are you sure, Chow?" I unconsciously looked back after hearing Chow's remarks, and there was nothing behind me. Chow sat up uneasily, looking behind me and seeing nothing. He couldn't believe he was wrong because the woman's form was clearly visible.
He can't
I
see
merely
her.
told Chow that perhaps I caught a cold from the seawater, so I went to bed early to relax. What I believed was a cold turned out to be a virus that caught a cold from the seawater, so I went to bed early to relax. What I believed was a cold turned out to be a virus that could have killed me if it hadn't been identified in time.
Jesus.
I overslept that day. I developed a high fever, couldn't get out of bed for 2 days, and experienced agony all over my body after taking the medicine, which scarcely worked. My classmates rushed me to a hospital near the school for emergency treatment. I still have a high fever after 3 days of infusion in the hospital, and my classmates were quite concerned. They wanted to inform my parents so that they could come to take care of me. Fortunately, on the 4th day, I was gradually improving. The fever was still present, but my mind felt much better. But that day, Chow observed something that startled him while watching TV in the school infirmary, as I was still chatting to the guy next to me. A woman's corpse discovered in the sea. A drowning accident was being reported on a local TV news show. It came out that the foreign female was trapped on the beach and died because of falling into the sea. A week later, her body was discovered on the beach, and the place where the body was discovered was where I was stuck that day. Even worse, Chow noticed that the girl on TV resembled the girl whom I carried on my back the other day, who had long hair and wore yellow clothing. Chow didn't complete his statement, but I had a feeling I knew what had happened. Could it be that the rock I was sitting on that day was where the girl died, and when I fell into the water, I became ensnared by the girl's ghost? I wasn't sure whether that was the case.
The rock was haunted, I guess?
I didn't dare to think about it, so I told myself to try to forget. Yeah, I didn't know if it was a coincidence.
That's not something you're gonna forget,
but when the girl's corpse was picked up, my condition progressively improved. For the following 4 years of my academic career, I went to the beach to enjoy the lovely landscape. But I also realized that the water, although beautiful, was also quite hazardous.
Alright, you guys, there you have it. That was 5 true urban legend horror stories animated, okay? Which one here stood out to you guys? This is a very short, little review I'm gonna give because I know this was a long video already. So I'm just gonna tell you which one stood out to me the most. And I think the one that stood out to me the most was actually the less scary one and the more sad one out of all the stories, which is the man in the boat, where his job was to find corpses that were in the water, like dead bodies in the water, and then bring them to their families, right? But the whole tragic of the end of the story here, where he had a moment of joy with his daughter, and ultimately it turned out to be a catastrophe because he exploded and ran out of his house angry because of what she had told him about his job, that she did not approve, or she didn't like what he was doing, right? The whole time she was just not happy with his job. I mean, obviously, and he stormed out of there angry. And well, later on he saw her apologizing, which was actually her spirit after she had actually died moments before that, looking for him and falling into the water where she drowned. That was just sad, man. It was a sad story. It was horrifying, what had happened to her, not necessarily the fact that she appeared to him as already a spirit, and he couldn't actually touch her when he tried to stop her from going back into the water, but the fact that she came back to him, and in sorrow, trying to apologize to him before she left. I mean, dude, that is really, really sad. And then that just ended up breaking him at the end of the film, at the end of the story, where he just kind of screamed in the rain. I mean, I can't even imagine the pain that he ultimately felt for the rest of his life, with the loss of his daughter. I remember one time my mom told me that she said that, well, there was a funeral that was happening with somebody's mother that passed away from cancer. And my mom told me, after I had told her how hard it must have been on the kids and on the husband, from experiencing that loss. She was saying that it's not compared to the pain that you feel when you lose a child, And I was just completely thrown off, but I was like, doesn't it hurt anyway, regardless of who it is? She's like, of course it does. But she said that, there's the loss of somebody that's barely starting to live their life, that, you've already lived yours as a parent. Now you're watching somebody live theirs. And the fact that they were now taken away at such an early age is saddened. It feels like a huge interruption, like a weird interruption in their life that just didn't allow them to keep going forward, you know, and they're just gone, and you don't see them anywhere else anymore. You don't see them grow up and experience the new things that you've already experienced as an adult. And she's like, that really hurts. Now, I'm not saying my mom has experienced that. She has not. She has lost a child like before giving birth, but she hasn't experienced the fact that she watched somebody grow up to, you know, watch them pass away. Thankfully, that has not happened. I hope it does not happen anytime soon. But I mean, the way that she mentioned that was just really, really sad to me. And I can't even imagine how it might feel as a parent, you know, to lose a child. So regardless of how, like, what hurts more, what hurts less, it still hurts to lose somebody in general that was close to you. And so this story, I think, stood out to me the most because it was very tragic of what had happened to this poor man who already lived a painful life by losing his wife earlier in his life, and then having to perform this type of job, right? Very gruesome type of job, very sad job as well. And then still having to experience his daughter's death at the end. I mean, what else can happen to this man? Like, there's nothing for him to lose anymore, you know? So yeah, that's the one that stood out to me the most out of all these stories. What did you guys think about, you know, you can choose a specific story out of these 5 short stories, and let me know what you thought specifically about that story that you liked. So you guys go ahead and click that subscribe button. Go ahead and click that share button or that like button like that, and let me know that you liked and enjoyed this video, you guys. I would really appreciate that. And thank you so much again for the people who have subscribed. I know that it's a very low number still on my channel, but I know that we can reach 500 at some point. Right now, the short-term goal is 300, and then later on it'll just go to like 400. Let's go to 5. Let's go to 6. Let's go to 8. Let's go to 1,000. Whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I really want this channel to grow, you guys, and I just love doing this for you guys every day. So thank you guys for watching, for those who do watch, and I appreciate those of you who stuck all the way to the end with me in this video. I know it was a long one, but thank you for sticking all the way to the end with me. I appreciate that. You guys have a great day. Take care of yourselves. Peace.
Subscribe.